Hey there, comic fans. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm going to answer your questions. Recently, we had the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Yes, we hit 1,000 subscribers thanks to you. And for the 1,000 subscriber giveaway, in order to enter that, you had to ask me any question. And I promised you any answer. And that's what I've got today. I've got a bunch of answers to all of your questions. Um, Before we dive into that, just real quick, I want to give sort of a state of the channel. I'm, as always, trying to do basically 2 videos a week. Trying to do one on Monday and one on Thursday. Some weeks I'll have a bonus video in the middle, in which case it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But for the most part, I'm still going to try and stick to that twice a week. And as always, most of my stuff is going to be about back issues, collecting, going to stores. I'm going to be showing off my back issues, things like that. I am doing more stuff with the comics I'm making because I'm doing more Kickstarters. So last year I did, 2 years ago I did 3 Kickstarters. Last year I did 5. This year I'm trying to do 6. I don't know if I'll be able to get to that. There's only, I can only work so fast on these, but we're going to try to do 6. I always do a live stream to start and a live stream to end, so that means we're doing more content that has to do with me making comics. It cuts into a little bit into the back issue stuff, but I'm committed to sort of keeping this mostly about the back issues, and I try and do the videos about making comics, about the stuff I'm doing, stuff I'm making, as sort of bonus videos in the middle of the week if I can, particularly if I'm doing like interviews with other comic creators and that sort of thing. There's some overlap in the audiences, but I know some of you are coming just for the back issues, you don't really care about that stuff, and some of you are coming just for the comic creation, and you don't really care about the back issue stuff. So try not to get too much of the chocolate and the peanut butter, and keep them a little bit separate. To that, I just wanted to say that last week at the end of my campaign, I decided to try something new, which was the YouTube Shorts. Basically, I didn't realize that shorts were going to appear on my regular feed because they're sort of like vertical, and they're meant to be sort of YouTube's version of TikTok, and they're promoted in a different section of the YouTube page. I thought it was kind of a separate thing. So I thought that when I did the YouTube Shorts, they were going to be over here, and only the people looking at shorts are going to see them. But I realized afterwards that that wasn't the case, and it was still going out to everybody. And honestly, I didn't really like that because those are videos that were just designed to real quick tell people about my comic quest, which you can see behind me here, and then get people to go to Kickstarter and hopefully buy it, right? And I don't want my channel to be about me like trying to sell you stuff. So I was a little frustrated actually that those shorts appeared on my regular channel. Again, I thought it was only going to appear to people that were going through shorts, and it wasn't going to sort of cross-contaminate the rest of my channel. So I'm not going to do any more shorts like that unless I get to the end of a campaign and I desperately need it, which is what happened last time. I will say the shorts actually were sent out to a lot more people. I mean, normally I get between 50 and 90 views on my videos here. The shorts each got about 400 inside of a day. So it worked in terms of getting out to the audience, but it's not really something I'm comfortable doing very much, so I'm only going to do that if I absolutely have to. And if you see a short pop up and it's got a picture of me holding up one of my comics, you can skip it if you want to, because it's going to be me basically trying to explain to new people, I'm making this comic, and here's why you should come get it on Kickstarter. But there's not going to be much more to it than that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I didn't really like those being on my feed, because this is our safe space to talk about how much we love old comic books, and it's not something where I really want to be selling, promoting and selling things to you. It's not what I'm here for. So anyway. Just wanted to mention that. So anyway, let's get to the questions. It's been 4.5 minutes. I still haven't actually answered any questions. I will say that while I was sort of reading these as they were coming in, I haven't done any thinking at all about the answers. So I'm going to be doing these answers right off the top of the dome. So here we go. First person with a question. It's Roger Metarog. Thanks so much for watching, Metarog. I really appreciate you watching. Metarog says, you have this weird bust of somebody that looks like a plop character on top of the bookshelf behind you. What is that, and why has it been so prominently displayed? Okay, so here it is. As you can see, it's a mug. 2 big feet, big face. It's a mug. This was a gift to me from my friend Randy. We occasionally try and get each other the weirdest gifts we can, and he outdid himself with this one. This used to be, back when I was a bachelor, in the center of my dining room table. And then once my wife and I moved in together, she basically had just one rule for the decoration, because the way we decorate our house is, I've got my room here where I do whatever I want. She's got her own room where she does anything she wants. The rest of the house we do together. We do everything together. It's a mix of all of our stuff and our styles and our sensibilities and stuff. So it's very collaborative to create the space for both of us. But she did have one rule, which was this was not allowed anywhere else in the house. So that's why you're seeing it prominently displayed here, is because I'm not allowed to show it anywhere else in the house. So that's basically the answer, the story behind that mug. I know Tartan Phantom is a big fan of the mug as well. The mug has actually been kind of blocked a little by this Crimebuster comic sign that was from a convention I did where they had that on my table. But there, I'll move that off to the side so everyone can see the mug a little bit better. So anyway, that's it for the mug. Thanks, Roger. Thank you for the question. Brad Bazanker 105. Brad, thanks for the question and the support. And Brad says, let's reverse this question. What's the one question you would ask fans of your channel? Well, this is an easy one, because that actually brings me to something I was going to mention. I discovered the other day that now that we've gotten to 1,000 subscribers or whatever, there's a section on my channel that's become unlocked called the community tab. And apparently I can post like text things, and I can ask polls. So if I want to ask questions of people, I can put out a poll, and I don't know if you get a notification. Like, I have no idea how it works. I don't know how anyone knows that I've done anything there. I really have no idea. I didn't even know it existed until yesterday. But I was thinking about doing a poll because I do have a question for people on my channel. So I'm going to ask it now, and maybe I'll do another poll with it later. I basically want to know what it is that you would like me to do more videos of. There's things that I like to talk about, and so far people seem to enjoy it. But if there's something specific that you want me to do a video on, I would love to know it, and might completely ignore what you want, depending on what it is you're asking. Like, if someone's like, hey, I really want you to talk about how awesome, the Jim Lee's run on Batman is, I'm going to be like, I don't know anything about that, because I'm not a fan of either Jim Lee or Batman. No hate mail, please. But if there's certain things that people want to see that I do think I could talk about or want to talk about, or like I have back issues that are relevant, then I'd love to, be making stuff that you want to watch. So let me know what you want to see. Specifically, I had a video, I mentioned this a couple times now, but I finally showed the video that I had recorded about the Jack Chick Crusaders #2. I had recorded it back in November, and then I decided not to show it because I thought it might be too controversial. And eventually people said that they wanted to see it, so I posted it. And basically it was one of like the 3 most popular videos I've ever done. And immediately, like, it was like 3,000 views or something crazy. So I do have more issues of Crusaders. I haven't even read a couple of them yet. So I could go over more. If you want me to do another video where I show off another issue of Crusaders and go through it, I can go through in a little more detail. But I only want to do that if you really want to see it. Even though it's great to get a video that has so many views, and I got a bunch of new subscribers from it, and that's supposed to be what we're, I guess, supposed to want as YouTube creators. I wasn't that comfortable with it. I got a lot of weird comments on that video. I eventually decided, normally I try and respond to everyone's comments, although I'm about a month and a half behind, just because I've been so busy with the Kickstarters. But I try eventually to respond to everyone's comments. But I decided I wasn't going to respond to anybody who commented on that, just across the board, because I just didn't want to engage with a lot of the stuff that was being commented on. And I don't really like that feeling with my channel. So, but the comic itself was hilarious. So, and I find the comics fascinating. So I'm willing to do another video if the people who normally watch my channel, which is, I'm certain if anyone that's still watching this video 10 minutes in, where I've only answered one question, um, if you guys want me to do another one of these videos, I'll be happy to do that, but only if, like, my regular core viewers want me to do it. So that's my question. What is it that you would like me to see? Let me know. Steve Alcoin, thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate the support. Says, my question is, what's your favorite genre of comics? It's a good question. My favorite genre to collect is romance. Most of the classic romance comics are very formulaic, so I really enjoy reading good, fun romance comics, but if you read more than a couple, like Silver or Bronze Age comics in a row, they typically start to get very samey and repetitive, and not that exciting. I really, really love fantasy comics as well. So, like with my Comic Quest, that's why I'm doing a fantasy comic, because I loved Warlord, Conan, Red Sonja. Elf Quest is one of my favorite comics of all time. Bone. So I would probably say fantasy. At least that's where I'm feeling right now. When I was a kid, I was really into sci-fi comics, but frankly, I haven't seen that many that really worked for a long term story wise. So I feel like fantasy has had a little bit of better track record, actually, in comics, at least the ones that I've read. So I would say fantasy, but romance is a close second. I like them for very different reasons. Thank you for the question. Okay, MRP. Thank you, MRP, for all your support with everything. I really appreciate this. My question is this: since you're using the Cthulhu mythos in some of your books, do you remember how you were first introduced to the mythos, or what your introduction to it was? Sure. Well, one of my friends from high school and college, and still a good friend of mine, Rob used to collect comics as well. So we would go to a lot of conventions together in the late 80s and in the 90s when we were in school. We'd do a lot of comic shows together, and spent a lot of time together. And we ended up getting randomly getting two jobs where we worked together. So we ended up working together for a number of years after college as well. And Rob was into horror. Now, I don't like reading horror. I don't like watching horror, but he was big into horror, and specifically into, I think he did his senior thesis on like Gothic horror, the roots of Gothic horror. So like 18th century, 19th century Gothic horror stuff. And he was big into Lovecraft. So that's where I was introduced to Cthulhu and the mythos, was through Rob. I remember he had a bumper sticker on his car that was like Cthulhu for president. I think it was 96. And it said, why settle for the lesser evil? Cthulhu 96. So that's where I first became familiar with Cthulhu and with the Lovecraft mythos, was from Rob, because he was really into Lovecraft stuff when we were in college in particular. So that's my answer. We can thank Rob for all of that. And thank you for the question, MRP. Next question, Devin R. Scott. Devin, thanks for watching. Hopefully I got that right. I appreciate your support as well. My question for you is this: what single issue of a series is your favorite of all time? It's a good question. A comic that I really love that found very emotional was Astro City #1/2. But I think my favorite single issue is actually Our Fighting Forces 152, which is a standalone single issue war story featuring the Losers, written and drawn by Jack Kirby, which is basically the pinnacle of Kirby for me. It's just a masterpiece. It's just fantastic. So I might have a different answer on a different day, but I think it's consistently the last decade or so. I would probably answer Our Fighting Forces 152 whenever that comes up. So one of my favorites. I think I did a video on it actually a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, but I don't really remember. But anyway, there might be a video that I did about that. So thank you very much for the question. Far Out Junk says, do you collect any trading cards? If so, what? Did the Marvel Universe Masterpieces set influence your love of comics? Or was that a little later in your collecting career? So thank you for the question. And actually, he mentions that he shared it on his community tab. So if I had read that comment in detail a few weeks ago, I would have known about the community tab before yesterday. So thank you for trying to tip me off to this. That was a little later in my collecting career. So, I started in 84. I started reading and collecting comics in 84. So when those sets were coming out, the Marvel cards from like Fleer or whatever, I think they were coming out in like 92, like around there. And it just wasn't for me, I don't think. That was right at where I was also sort of stopping collecting baseball cards. I got really into baseball cards in 88. And, it was a huge fad with collecting baseball cards in the late 80s. And then it became a huge thing. And then all these new publishers started printing their own sets of cards in like 88, 89, 90. And there's just and then there's just so much product and it just screwed everything up. So it was short for me. I was really into baseball cards from 88 to like 91, but by 92, the end of high school, I was sort of done with baseball cards. 92, it really tailed off hard for me on baseball cards. So I love trading cards though. I have a set of trading cards. I was just looking around to see if I had any on hand here because I could have sworn I had some. Oh yeah. So I do trading cards when I do my Kickstarters. Like I just did it for the last issue, Crime Busters. We hit our stretch goals, and I did a couple trading cards for that. We've got 27 trading cards so far, and that's for like all the comics I do. So there's like 27 trading cards. There's 16 cards from Crime Busters, 10 cards from Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam. Those take place in the same universe. And so far, we've only got the one card from Quest. I do these as stretch goals, and just Quest has been just barely hitting my goal every campaign. So I've only been able to do the one card for this. Every campaign, I announce a stretch goal for a new trading card, but we just haven't been hitting them. But I do love the trading cards. What I would really love to do at some point, if I can just figure out how to do it and have this time, is I want to do those little card binders like they have for people have for Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or whatever, where they have the sleeves that have 4 cards on each page, and you can get a little binder that's got 25 of those pages or something in it, and so you can fit 100 to 200 cards depending on whether you face double sleeve them. And I would love to make some of those that have my characters on it. That'll say the Crime Buster Comics, and it'll have the Crime Busters and the characters from Quest, Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam on it, so that people can have a special binder for the trading cards they've gotten from me. And so I have some trading cards somewhere here. I've talked a lot of... Oh, here they are. So I've done 27, but Miskatonic High, which is another series on Kickstarter, I talk a lot about because it's really cool. And Mike sort of Mike Shea, who does the series, works sort of in the same area as Crime Busters with Miskatonic High. They do trading cards as well. So I've got several. I've got 5 of them here, but I have some more somewhere else. So I do have some of the Miskatonic High cards. You can see here they're all the way up to number 62 was the most recent one that I got from them. So they've got a lot of trading cards. And honestly, I don't know. I just dropped one on the floor. These have come with some of the issues that I've gotten. But I'm not really sure how you get them all. I don't know. Whenever I do a Kickstarter, and even on my website, so if you go to crimebustercomics.com and go to the shop there, you can get a set of the trading cards. I think it's still priced at $10. I should probably raise that now that I have more cards, because I set that when I had fewer. But anyway, you can get this if you just want the trading cards. I had one person do that, go to my website and just buy the trading cards, didn't even get any of the comics. But for people who want to get the whole set, I always have that available, but I don't know how you can get the rest of the Miskatonic High cards. So sometime I'm going to talk to Mike about that, because I would love to pick his brain and see if he has any ideas on how to get some of those binders made. I'm talking about this a lot, but so I'll stop talking. But when I was a kid, I used to collect movie cards. So trading cards for somewhere, I think I still have one of the Empire Strikes Back sets. And I might have a Return of the Jedi set. I'm not sure if I still have them or not. I used to have them in like a photo album where I put them in there. I had the whole set, one of those whole sets. But I so early 80s, I used to do that. I had almost a full set of the Gremlins cards and the Goonies cards and those sort of things. There was a brief period right when I remember when Garbage Pail Kids came out. There was a huge fad with those, and they immediately became sold out, and we'd go around to stores trying to find any packs. And with a lot of these things, I get in just not on the first wave, but then the first wave everyone gets excited, and then the second wave we start hearing about it. So I think it wasn't until the second series of Garbage Pail Kids that I heard about it, and then it wasn't until the third series that we could really find them. So I used to have some of those when I was a kid, but that was sort of that collecting sort of died as soon as I sort of got into comics. So anyway, thank you for your question. Justin Bulka, thanks very much for the question, Justin. Do you have a favorite limited series? Oh boy. Favorite limited series. Let me think about that for a second. If I thought about it harder, I could probably come up with a different answer. But I really liked Avengers Forever. That book, I'm not sure it made any sense to anybody that wasn't a hardcore Avengers fan. But at the time, it was awesome because, Avengers had been really bad for a number of years. Avengers was always my favorite superhero comic. Had been really bad for several years, and then they canceled it, and then they gave it to Rob Liefeld, so it became the worst comic on the stands. And then miraculously, when they brought it back, it was Kurt Busiek and George Perez, one of the great creative teams put together. And then right after that, so we're so excited for the revival, and then Avengers Forever came out, and it was a love letter to Avengers history. I had a complete run of Avengers at that point. I had read the whole series several times, start to finish. So every little Easter egg or anything that was happening there, I knew who all the characters were. I knew what everything was referencing. And so for, a huge Avengers nerd like me, that was just you died and went to heaven. So I love that. Again, I'm not sure the story makes any sense or is good if you're not a super Avengers fan. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. But I loved it. Okay, Silver Knight Kyle. Kyle, thanks as always for your support. I really appreciate it very much. Let's see. Kyle, is there a particular Avengers issue you'd want to have a signed copy of for your run, of which the creator is no longer with us, making it all the more difficult to acquire? It's a good question because I have probably I don't even know. What my rule, as I've mentioned before, is if I go to a comic show and someone there has worked on Avengers, I always get them to sign Avengers. Now, I don't even have some of those anymore because I've gotten rid of, like, I no longer have my West Coast Avengers run. I don't have my solo Avengers run, and I had a bunch of those signed. But of the regular Avengers run, where I still have issues 1 to 100, 503 or whatever, at least 10% of them are signed. Like, I've probably got 50 or more issues that are signed by lots of different creators. And so it's a good question. And I have books that are signed by a number of creators and no longer with us. Gil Kane and George Perez and Stan Lee and Rich Buckler. I mean, I've got a lot. I'd love to have something from Don Heck. I would love to have something from Jack Kirby. I would love to have something from John Buscema. That's probably my answer. I mean, if I could get an Avengers 57 signed by John Buscema, that would be fantastic. Except for I really would want to. It's important to me to have them signed in person. Like, I want to meet the creator, even though a lot of times I'm not. When you're meeting your heroes, I don't often have a lot to say. It's kind of you're in awe when you meet Stan Lee. So I don't have much to say. So even if I met John Buscema, I probably wouldn't say anything. But I would want to meet him to have it signed. So I'll just answer it that way. If I could go back in time, what I would really like is to have John Buscema sign my Avengers 57. I mean, I could have had Roy Thomas sign my Avengers 57, and I didn't. I had him sign a couple other issues, but that's what I would really like. So that's my answer. So thank you, Kyle. Thanks for the question. Guillaume Barnaby, thank you for the question, Guillaume, and the support. I appreciate it. What is your Grail comic that you saw once and always regretted not buying? It's a good question because there's books that you see and you'd love to get but are out of your reach. This was a lot more common when I was younger, when the prices weren't so ridiculous, even relatively speaking. But I can remember going to shows and seeing like dealers at shows that had Batman #1, Superman #1, Captain America #1, Detective 27, Action 1. I remember seeing them at shows, right? But those were never possible. So there's two answers to this. They're both issues of Captain America. And they were both ones that theoretically could have been possible. I didn't quite have the money, but I could have gotten the money. And one of them is Captain America #78. It's from the 1950s revival, so still pre-code. But after the series had been defunct for a couple years, they brought it back for 3 issues, and there's this fantastic John Romita cover that's just great. He's in this great pose where he's like throwing this guy. It's got a yellow background, which I love. I saw that at a show for $125, and this was in the early 90s, and I didn't have $125. I could have, like, theoretically have tried to trade for it. I could have gotten $125 in trade, but that was a book where I was like, man, if I had, like, I might have had like $40, and I was like, it's a realistic possibility, but I couldn't quite do it at that show, and I never really saw one again that was affordable. It's not a book that you see very often. It wasn't like a high grade copy, but it was a nice, like, solid mid grade. And now that would cost whatever, I don't even know, $3,000 or something. So that's a book that I regret. The other thing is, when I saw Stan Lee, when I met Stan Lee in 1989, I brought with me a couple things for him to sign. The Avengers 300, which I just gave away as part of the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. I also brought Avengers 1, and I had him sign that. At the show, I bought a Fantastic Four #50 and had him sign that. When I don't know what happened to that. It's long gone. But at some point I got rid of it. But While I was looking around the show that day, I have a distinct memory of there was a dealer that had Captain America #3, which was the first Stanley's first published story was in that. It was the text story. But it was an incomplete copy, and I can't remember whether it was missing the cover. It might have been a coverless copy, or it might have been had the cover but was missing some wraps. I don't remember. But it was $100, and I was just like, again, I didn't have $100, but my dad was there, and I had stuff to trade. It's possible I could have wrangled something, but I couldn't justify to myself at the time spending $100 on an incomplete comic. And that's one where I definitely regretted that later. That's a regret. I wish I had gotten that and had Stanley sign it. So those are my answers. Those are 2 Captain America books I really wish I had gotten when I had the chance. Okay. Omric, thanks so much for the question. Omric, question: I'm interested in exploring DC war titles. What's your favorite title run, and do you remember? What's your favorite title run, and what do you recommend to start with, considering availability and price? So my favorite title and run from the DC War books, personally, is Unknown Soldier. So a lot of the DC War titles that I like are not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. I prefer the offbeat sort of Bronze Age anti-hero sensibilities to the earlier stuff from the 60s and before. Even like Sergeant Rock has a lot of good stories, but it's a little too straight-laced for me. So you can get the full run of Unknown Soldier, and it's a fun run to put together because there's a lot of great covers, there's a lot of great stories, and it's a long run. It starts with issue 151. Boy, I must be tired. It starts with issue 151 of Unknown Soldier, and then Event of Star Spangled War Stories. They changed the title of Unknown Soldier. The last issue is 268, so it's over 100 issues. It's not the easiest to find some of those later ones because war books, by the time it was canceled in the early 80s, like there weren't many war books around. It's one of the last ones, really. So it's a fun challenge. So that's my favorite. But you can still get them cheap. Like you're not going to pay more than $30 or $40. You can get like a reasonable, nice looking lower mid-grade copy of his first appearance for $40 or $50. Like it's a fun series for me. Second for me is The Losers, for a lot of the same reasons. That does have the Jack Kirby run that I mentioned earlier in the middle of it, but it's also got some tremendous artwork from John Severin does artwork in it. Joe Kubert does these amazing covers for the series where the logo is different every issue. Those are some of my favorite covers. And then again, like it's not that easy to find the last few issues. It's Our Fighting Forces. I think this started issue 123 and it runs to 181 or so. So that's a run that's it's like 60 issues or so. So it's not super long, but it's got a lot of really cool stories in it. Those are my favorites. Let's see. Enemy Ace would be a great place to start. Weird War Tales is a great series. Some amazing covers, and that's one where when I was getting started in collecting, I was always like, I didn't want it to actually be too easy. I wanted there to be a challenge. I wanted there to be some keys that were sort of higher priced and harder to find, but I wanted it to be like possible, right? And so Weird War Tales is great. There's 124 issues. The first issue, is a nice, really cool Bronze Age key. All of those first few issues. They've also got issue 93, the first Creature Commandos, which is a fun key to try and find. The last issue, 124, is going to set you back a little bit, and it's hard to find. So there's things to chase in it. It's more of an anthology though, so it's a little bit lower on my list than the other ones. But but if you want like challenge, um, the Mademoiselle Marie issues of Star Spangled War stories are also favorites of mine. Only ran for 6 issues, 84 to 89. Um, and they're all very expensive and very hard to find, but that's a cool run. But so for me anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Those would be where I would start, would be Unknown Soldier, Our Fighting Forces, We're War Tales. Those are the 3 series that I would start. Okay, just a few questions left. I know the video is getting long, but I don't really feel like breaking it up. Captain Beyond says, do you own a copy of the book Seduction of the Innocent, or are you looking out for it, or you don't really care about reading it? So I don't own a copy. I don't really care about reading it, but I do keep an eye out for it. Like if I'm at used bookstores or junk shops, it's always on my radar. If I got one, I probably wouldn't keep it. It'd be an interesting curiosity to have as part of the collection. So I'm not sure what I would do if I'd find it. It's not something I would pay money for, because I would rather spend that money on comics. But it's something really cool. There's a guy on the CGC forums who has this insane collection of like everything to do with Seduction of the Innocent. And every once in a while he'll have a sales thread where he'll sell like undercopies. He's sold like multiple copies of the book and like all this cool stuff. So it's really cool to see people with those specific collecting focus, but it's not for me personally. Let's see. Josh Millard. Thanks for the question, Josh. My favorite Tool song is Stinkfist. What is yours? Well, thanks for the question. Depends on what mood I'm in, but I like their longer stuff best. So I would say my favorite for the last 2 or 3 years has been Descending from their most recent album. That song is amazing. And when I was working on Quest, when I'm working on Quest, whether I'm writing it or drawing it, I put that song on and I just play it on repeat. So over the last year, I've probably listened to Descending from Tool over 1,000 times. I'm just constantly listening to it because it has that like epic vibe that is what I want the comic to feel like. I'm a huge fan of Lateralis. The Fibonacci sequence, the spirals, but the way that they have the different time signatures and stuff in that, and when they come together, like there's a part right at the end where everything sort of is swirling around and finally different things are interconnecting and then they hit right at the thing. There's a part that every single time all the hair on the back of my neck stands up and I just get this feeling like in the base of my skull that's just like, and that's been 20 years now and it still happens when I listen to that song. And then finally I would say Third Eye. I particularly prefer the live version of Third Eye from Salival. That song is fantastic, but I like the intro on the studio version. You know, it's I just blanked on his name, Bill Hicks, I guess. It's a comedian. He's talking about using drugs, and I just find that sort of thing to be I don't know. I don't take drugs, and I find the sort of drug culture to be kind of boring. And so like that quote doesn't really work for me, but there's a quote from Timothy Leary on the live version that they use instead, and that is a philosophy that I can really get behind, that quote. And also the drums are slightly different. A lot of the stuff in the live things on Salival is where Danny Carey has really started to do some of the Eastern drum stuff, and it's not as prevalent on the Third Eye, but the drums do sound a little bit different. There's a little bit of that going on in that live version compared to the studio version. That gives it a sound that I prefer. So the live version, yeah, that's a top 3 for me. So thank you very much. Um, AWKSOTD. I'm not sure how to say it. Ox, and then there's something. Any hobbies or collections other than comics? I don't really collect that much other than comics. I've got like bits and pieces there. I've got like some old D&D books. I've got a lot of board games. I still have some of my baseball cards. I got rid of most of them 30 years ago, but I still have somewhere. I still have my Red Sox collection. So I was trying to put together a set of all the Topps Red Sox cards, and I didn't get that far with it, to be honest. But I do have quite a few Red Sox cards here somewhere. But I don't actively collect any of that stuff. In terms of other hobbies, like I'm into genealogy. I've done a lot of stuff with my family tree over the last 15 to 20 years. So I'm really into genealogy and history, family history. I love playing video games. I used to love like MMOs, but like to relax, I would play like shooters online. It would be like Apex Legends was one I was really into the first like 2 years that was out, but I actually developed arthritis in my hands that only bothers me when I use a controller. Particularly the knuckles on my thumbs, my thumb joints. It doesn't bother me any other time, but it's almost like I have permanent Nintendo thumb. If I start using the controller where you have the joysticks up here that you have to control with your thumbs, inside of an hour I start having a lot of pain in my fingers. So I've had to stop playing a lot of video games because of that. And even when I play on my laptop, I can get into a video game a little too much and play for hours at a time. And after a while, I have to do everything lying down or standing up. So a lot of times I'm playing a video game, I'm lying down, and having my hands sort of up like this, reclining and having the thing in front of me, my hands really start to bother me after a few hours. So it's been tough. I've had to mostly give up the video gaming, but I'm always looking for ways to play. So I don't know if that would really count as a hobby, but it's something that I enjoyed quite a bit in my spare time. But I can't really do it anymore. Let's see, Groove Dude. All right, we're in the last batch of questions now. Groove Dude says, "What series merits a good reboot in your opinion?" Good question. Well, I'd love to have a Jughead reboot. I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen. My immediate instinct is something sci-fi. I know there's been recent reboots of like ROM. ROM's a series that I thought was amazing, and I've read a couple issues of the reboot, and I didn't really think they did that much for me. Mademoiselle Marie, I've already mentioned, but that's something that I think could be really interesting from a modern perspective. There's a lot of Golden Age characters that I use in my comics because I think they have a lot of potential that has sort of been forgotten. But yeah, I'm not sure any of those were very good answers. Comics is sort of perpetually rebooting everything, so it's hard to think of something that ended and didn't get like a good reboot. I loved Unknown Soldier, but the reboots of that I've read haven't really grabbed me that much either. I've read a couple different ones, and they didn't really do much for me. Yeah, I guess I'll stick with those answers, even though they were kind of crappy. Sorry. Bizarre Brain, who would your classic Golden Age era newspaper strip creator favorites? So, who are my favorite Golden Age era newspaper strip creators? I don't really know that much about strips, to be honest. Something about the format, even though I love comic books, comic strips, I've just never got into as much. I mean, people like Alex Raymond, you can see how important their work is and how great their art is. And Hal Foster, and so like those greats, and then Tarp Mills, some of the pioneering people from the 40s. But I have to say, I just don't really know that much about the strips. I know there's people that watch this channel that can answer this much better than I can. So I'm going to invite you to do that. So like this is an area that's kind of an area of ignorance for me. But those of you who are really into the Golden Age strips, why don't you tell me down below which ones I should be reading, which ones I should look into, and maybe I will. Probably won't, but I'll at least have a guideline. So let me know what you think down below. Who should I be looking at? Las Cruces, hi, thanks you so much for the question and the support. Says, double covers. Do you own any? Have you ever specifically bought a book because it had a double cover? I've never bought a book because it has a double cover. I have one or two. I actually have an issue of Boy Comics. I think it's issue 83. So it's like 1952, around its early 50s. That has a double cover. Unfortunately, it's like the worst era of the book by far. But I do have one issue of Boy Comics with a double cover. I think that's it. I think that's all I have right now. I remember when I was a kid, I had an issue of Sergeant Fury with a double cover. It was one of the later reprint ones. But it's not something I've run into very much. I know, like, I've read some stuff about it, like on the CGC forums. I know that books that have a double cover tend to be other issues of that same, other copies of that same issue also tend to have double covers. Like if you get one that has a double, or particularly if it has more like a triple cover, it's a good idea to then look out for other copies of that same issue, because they're more likely to have a double cover than just random stuff, because there was something going on with the production process. Like what is it? Amazing Spider-Man 361, is it? The first appearance of Carnage, the first full Carnage. That's one that's prone to double covers, I guess. There was someone on the CGC forums that has a copy that has 8 covers on it. So that's something where it's like you can look out for certain books, but I've really had almost no luck with that. I just have the one right now, as far as I know. And last question, Tartan Fan. I'm Rob. Thanks so much for your support and your question. I remember you mentioning your father liked comics too. What were some of his favorites from back in the day? So 2 answers to this. When I was a kid reading comics, I've mentioned this several times, but the one that he would read was Gru. So that was, I would read Gru and then I'd give it to him and he would read it. But from when he was young, the only one that he specifically mentioned to me was Thor. So I know that he was reading stuff in the 60s when he was like in the Marines. So he joined the Marines, I think in 66. Might have been 65. Trying to think. Might have been 65. Anyway, he was in the Marines. I know when he was in Vietnam, he was reading Thor, and he was in Vietnam for a year and a half because he did 2 tours. So I don't know, that was 66, 67, and the beginning of 60, end of 66, all of 67, beginning of 68. And he mentioned Thor, so I know that he was reading Marvels, and Thor was the one that, you know, because when I started reading comics, one of the very first comics I ever got was Walt Simonson Thor. And he commented at the time that he had read Thor. The other thing, though, is I have a photo of my father from 1978. So that was when I was 5 years old. And he's wearing an Amazing Spider-Man t-shirt. I have no memory of him ever wearing that shirt, but I have the photo to show that he did in the 70s. So I don't know if he obviously was aware of Spider-Man and liked the character enough to buy a shirt in the 70s. So, but I don't know for sure if he was reading Spider-Man in the 60s or not, but I know he read Thor and he apparently liked Spider-Man. So, that's it. So, wow, this is a really long video, but that is how I roll. So thank you all so much for watching. If you've managed to make it through this, incredible job. Good for you. Let me know down below what you think of all these answers. Let me know if you want me to do another deep dive into an issue of Jack Chick's Crusader series. Let me know which Golden Age comic strip creators I should look into. And I'll see you next time.